Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's Better on Draft.
Welcome, everybody, to the Michigan Beer Series of the Better on Draft podcast, episode number 50. My name is Kent. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I truly appreciate it. It is a balmy November here in Michigan. I am going to start off by telling you I am drinking. I'm double fisted. I'm pulling an old school Nick Paglia here. I got the Night Swimmer Stout from Stormcloud right up here, and I'm going to be following that up with the Rainmaker Ale from Stormcloud Brewing. Rob, what do you got over there? Rob, we muted you, so try that again.
Sorry, I did not have Stormcloud here in Indianapolis. So I have Celebration because I was excited to see it on the shelves, and I also am double fisting it because my wife decided to open a Bourbon County brand stout. So I have half of that.
I'm excited. I've got a bunch of people coming over for a Friendsgiving, and I've got a bunch of Bourbon County you can kind of see over my left shoulder, actually, to have them drink it because I can't finish those beers anymore myself these days. Wendy, what are you drinking?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I could not decide which beer to drink today, so I am double fisting. I have a Rainmaker Ale from Stormcloud and a Wild Away IPA, which is fantastic, by the way. They're both awesome, but that's delicious.
The beers that I got, I distributed purposefully. If you couldn't tell, you did get the IPAs, and I just did not give myself any. So I knew you would enjoy them. I knew I wouldn't. But we know that's just the styles that I don't like. But with Stormcloud Brewing as the beers we are drinking, let's bring in our guest. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do and where you work?
Yeah, I'm Brian Confer. I'm the head brewer and a co-owner at Stormcloud Brewing Company here in Frankfort, Michigan. Not Frankenmuth, Frankfort. Just a couple blocks from the shore of Lake Michigan, resort town. And it's pretty sleepy up here already now that we're into November.
Where is Frankfort? Like you said, it's kind of a small little town. Like where in Michigan?
It's it's pretty much due west of Traverse City. And I know that throws some people off because they think Traverse City is on the lake, but no, it's not. If you take a left turn at Traverse City, if you're coming from Detroit, you got about a 45 to 50 minute drive, depending on if you're behind an RV or not. And if you don't stop at our brewery, you will drive into Lake Michigan. And that's where we're at.
Now, you guys have been up there for over a decade now, I believe. Is that correct?
2013. We opened shortly before July 4th in 2013.
What was the reasoning for choosing Frankfort itself for a brewery?
Other than living here already, that would probably be the main one. My business partner and I, Rick Schmidt, he's a former VP of sales and marketing at Crystal Mountain. And I don't know when I moved up here. We both moved up here at roughly the same time. He was ahead of me. Our kids were both in school together. They both graduated together. So, that's the bottom line. That's why we're in Frankfort. We already lived here.
Did you, prior to Stormcloud, work at a brewery? Were you a home brewer? What was your history of brewing?
Yeah, my history of brewing. So no, I was not, never worked in a brewery, and wasn't much of a home brewer before deciding I was going to open a brewery. Then I got deep into home brewing. I worked for many years as a commercial photographer in Northern Michigan, and was looking to get out of that industry as it transitioned from traditional film to digital. And landed on brewing. I'd looked into getting into the restaurant world. Had enrolled in culinary school for one day and realized that probably wasn't the right solution. and around that time, shot a feature story on Shorts Brewing. They were about a year old when I photographed that story, and they're about 45 minutes northeast of Traverse, and I drove that 2-hour drive back home on a wintry night, and just thought that would tie my love of food and flavor together, and if it could work in Bel Air, it could probably work in Frankfurt. Took another 10 years to get open, and it's a little potentially mentally faulty to try to think you can do what Joe did, but I gave it my best, and here we are.
Well, before we continue into the history, I'm currently drinking the Night Swimmer Stout, and kind of explain what flavor and what taste I'm getting on here, because it's giving me a little bit of almost a bitter back end, but a very sweet beginning. So I'm getting like very sweetness until kind of like the end, and it's kind of hitting me up with a little hop or something. Maybe the coffee.
Yeah, there is a lot of sweetness in that beer, and any bitterness that you're getting is probably just residual from the dark malt that's in there, as the sweetness sort of melds away, washes away. We do hit that beer with a pretty high mash temperature, and also we do throw some maltodextrin in there to just give it some body and sweetness. We use a fair amount of dark Belgian candy syrup in there. It's kind of counter purpose. Like I think about this beer a lot, and we play around with a lot, and we keep coming back to the original recipe, even though that sugar is kind of thinning out the body, and then we're adding maltodextrin back in to add body. But that sugar provides that dark sugar provides some sort of deep fruity notes that we wouldn't get otherwise. So it's not highly hopped. We have upped the bitterness on that a little bit, but we do try to. We don't use like all of the dark malt in there is like Carafa special malt, so it's not throwing a ton of astringency in there, but that would be where you're getting that bitterness, I would guess.
You mentioned changing the recipe. How does one, because adapting with the times and maybe even adapting with what's available, because sometimes not the ingredients might not be available to you. How do you go about trying to match what you've previously had before with maybe different ingredients, or why do you keep trying to change the recipe and then come back to it? Like, what's that missing thing you feel?
Well, the bottom line of changing the recipe is just to make it a little more affordable to brew. At least that is for Night Swimmer. But in terms of changing the recipes on all the beers, I mean, I tend to change them and play around with variables quite a bit. We've been brewing Rainmaker since day one, I still play around with that recipe here and there. Small tweaks, sometimes larger tweaks, and see what it tastes like, and then maybe we pull it back a little bit. Maybe we keep that change, but I've never been one to just leave it as it is. We're always messing with it. Whether it's just we use an RO water system, so a lot of times we're playing with the water profile. Sometimes we're pulling back one ingredient, adding a little bit more of another. I've never been too worried about doing that. And I mean, we're never making a big enough change. Like, Rainmaker is always going to be a more amber colored pale ale. It's never going to be a blonde. It's never going to be dark as a stout. The changes we're making are within still the parameters of what the beer is. But yeah, we're usually always playing with it.
Have you ever had you mentioned playing with it. Have you ever had a time that you've played with the beer itself? And of course, what are you drinking? First of all, we didn't even ask you.
Yeah, I almost cracked open a Rainmaker because I love that beer, but I just had one with dinner. So I actually pulled open a bottle of our, where's my camera? There it is. Maybe I drank too much. So I've also had some bourbon and a cigar tonight. Although I shouldn't admit to having a cigar because maybe the insurance company's listening. This is our Belgian style double. Corked and caged, but the cork isn't in there anymore.
Well, I gotta ask before I pass it off to Rob and Wendy, because I'm gonna go down a little bit of a hole. But what's your cigar of choice? Are you do you like something sweet like a Connecticut wrapper? Are you looking for something a little spicy? Do you go for the full big Churchill, or maybe something with a small ring gauge? Like what's your go-to cigar?
Just a standard Robusto, Oliva Milanio. Yeah, that's my cigar choice.
Okay. Do you think
probably the Maduro version?
Do you think cigars go well with beer? Like, do you like to pair your cigars with beer, or do you just kind of?
I know I'm biased, but I think Rainmaker is an awesome cigar beer. If it's not Rainmaker, I might have a little bit of bourbon, but actually, oddly enough, my beverage of choice with the cigar is just a glass of water.
I do like staying hydrated, but I'm definitely a person that loves a lager. Something
Sure.
clean and crisp with a cigar, I think pairs off very, very well. I think whatever the cigar is, it takes off the harshness between the two. And if you've got like a sweet beer is too much, and I think it takes too much away from the cigar, but like a nice crisp, and I'll even say it, just like a Labatt Light or a Molson or something like that with the cigar goes really well. But I'm going to pass it off over to Wendy. Wendy, what do you got for Brian over here?
Rainmaker is actually one of my favorite beers as well. So I just thought I would share that with you. That I was really happy it was in the pack because I can't get it down here by me. So
where are you?
I'm in Garden City.
Where's that?
I haven't found it by me. It's about 30 minutes outside of Detroit. I'm smack in between Detroit and Ann Arbor.
Gotcha. Yeah, we have some pockets down there that we're not in, for sure.
So, but I do love it when I get it. So there's a million things that I could ask you about. So let's start with the curling club. I have friends that are really into curling. So I love that I saw that on your website. How did that come about, and how do you make that work at your pub?
Right. So I don't remember how it came about exactly. I know I thought it would be fun at one time to like take one day and freeze the street in front of Stormcloud and have a curling tournament. And we kind of talked about that a little bit, and logistically it just didn't seem like we could pull it off. And then my business partner and I thought, well, what if we just freeze the side yard? Because if you've been to Stormcloud, we have the pub, we have a patio, and then we have a yard that's between our facility and the storefront next to us. So it's basically a lot that a store could be in, but it's just empty. So we have a whole lot there. So we thought, well, what if we just freeze that lot? Well, it slopes pretty considerably from the front of the lot to the back. So then we ended up, okay, well, we do like this idea, but now we're going to need to build a structure. And the structure ended up being a pretty significant structure. But once we were far enough along, we hit a point where there was no turning back. So I don't know how many years we've been doing this, but we still put it up every year. And it's Rick, my business partner, out there pouring water on it and freezing it. As winters have warmed up, last year we got our hands on a glycol chiller that was given to us. We just needed to make it work, and it didn't want to work. Luckily, we have a friend of the company who's a pretty brilliant engineer, and he ripped it apart and got it back in working condition.
I am just loving how this thing is coming together in tiny little pieces.
So we got the glycol chiller, beginning of winter last year. It was the end of winter before we finally actually had it putting glycol through the sheet, and ran into some other issues. So this year we're going to give it another go, and we're reasonably confident that sheet will be frozen all winter long, and people will be curling on it all winter long.
Oh, I'm muted. I think we lost Brian.
I'm
There
like,
we
I
go.
don't know if it's me.
Yeah, I'm trying to talk, and Wendy can't hear me. So we'll keep the conversation going a little bit while Brian is.
I'm going to guess he's got another year, maybe 2, before they put walls around the thing and a roof over it. It becomes a year-long curling rink.
I still have. Have you guys ever been curling before? I've never been curling.
I've never been curling. I played broomball through college, which is not the same, but it is fun on ice.
I am aware of broomball just because we have a Michigan Tech is a huge broomball school. So I'm aware of broomball. Brian, welcome back.
Yeah, sorry. You know, one of the issues where we're at is we're not on the grid, on the internet grid here. So we occasionally we get it wireless, transmitted from the pub over to the production facility. And occasionally, I don't know what happens. It takes a left turn somewhere.
Well, I'm on the grid and I have to reset my router like twice a week right now.
It could be related to all that metal behind you, too.
Yeah, maybe.
Before we move on from curling, I ask, do you have to be a part of the league, or do you guys like have classes and people can just come and do curling?
There's open curling on Saturdays, and you can always, I think you can reserve a time. I'm not directly involved in that, so I'm not sure the ins and outs of it. Yeah, there's a league 2 nights a week, and then open curling on Saturdays that you sign up for. And if you wanted to bring a group up, you can reserve ice time.
So I'm a member of the Detroit Draft Divas, and there's a curling club in East Point I think it's East Point. No. Oak Park? Anyways, there's a curling club down here that we have members that belong to it. So we've had a couple of curling events. So maybe I can talk them into doing a road trip up to visit your facilities.
Yeah, is that an indoor curling?
It is.
Yeah, this is very much not indoor curling.
While you were being dropped earlier, I was conjecturing that it'll be a couple more years before you build walls around the thing and a roof over it.
Yeah, it's not a full sheet, unfortunately. I mean, it's and it used to be a half a sheet, and then we had to shorten it up even a little bit more. But the conditions are often that a half sheet is just fine because it's hard enough to get the stone down to the end.
So another thing that I noticed was the Lake House Ales project, and
Right.
I'm a big fan of sours, so I'm interested to hear about that.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we're winding that down a little bit, which bums me out, but it's just the reality that we needed to. Yeah, Lake House Ales. It's a little bit of an in joke because we're on the lake, not on a farm, so they're not farmhouse ales; they're lake house ales. It is our mixed culture program. I won't call it a sour program. We have a couple of 20-barrel fooders and a whole bunch of barrels that we've rotated in and out of there. The fooders are empty at the moment. And they were, which I was really proud of the beers that came out of those fooders. But the volume was just, we overshot our volume by buying 20-barrel fooders, and we just can't really keep that program going. So at some point, we still have some stainless fermenters in the sour facility. And we are going to try to keep some saisons going, some mixed culture saisons going in those stainless fermenters. But the fooder program has probably seen its last beer in them. But the beers that we put in there, we spent some time getting a house strain developed in those fooders. We fermented not a saison per se, but we did a saison malt bill, but then fermented with the Kvike strain, and then that went into the foeder post fermentation and developed typically for about 6 months, 6 to 8 months, and was really happy with what we got out of those. That Kvike strain, threw a different flavor, of a more fruity, citrusy flavor into those beers than what a straight saison would have done.
Alrighty, and before I pass it over to Rob, I'm just curious. I am really bummed because I missed the beer dinner this past summer, and I'm wondering if you guys are going to do that again.
This summer, I don't think we did a beer dinner this summer. You might be thinking about last winter. We did
That
one,
might be.
yeah, with James Bloomfield, who's just an amazing chef, who was born and raised here in northern Michigan and moved out to California and just was killing it out there. He comes back now and then because he still has family here. So we were able to enlist him to come in and cook for us for one night. I don't know if we'll do that again. We won't bug James again, but there's plenty of lots of talented chefs out there. They're not all nomads, and they're not all visiting northern Michigan. So we'll see what we can put together. And when we do, we'll send you an invite.
Absolutely. I have been talking a lot with friends recently about beer dinners and food pairings and things like that. So we've been trying to figure out where they are. And I just remembered wishing that I could come out because I love your beer and obviously I like food. So I'm like, this makes no sense.
That was a fun one with James because we did all of bottle conditioned beers, including some of the lake house ales. So nothing off draft. It was all corked and caged bottles. Yeah, the beer dinner. The beer dinner. You don't see them very often anymore. They were certainly a thing when we got started up. It'd be nice to see them come back.
Absolutely. I guess that kind of will lead me to one more question before I hand it off to Rob. There has been obviously drastic changes in the industry over the last few years. And I'm just curious, what have you done over the past few years to kind of pivot or come out of the issues from COVID and then deal with the issues that we're facing today?
Sure. Yeah. Well, one of them, down in your corner, you might of the world, you might not like to hear. We are pulling back in distribution from southern Michigan and retrenching a little bit in northern Michigan. It's expensive to be in distribution, and it's expensive to distribute your beer. And the further away it travels, the more expensive it gets. The less control you have, and the less commitment the distributors have towards your product. So I think that's one thing that we're seeing. We are pulling back some on that to have more focus closer to home where we have more influence. We did install a sweet little 4-barrel system here in the production facility off to the side of the facility. As production and distribution decreases, the 20-barrel system is definitely overkill for what we need at the pub, and what we need at the pub is more diversity and sort of nimbleness on what goes on tap. So we put in a 4-barrel system towards the beginning of this year. We're still. It came online right at the beginning of summer, so. It's still waiting to get its first beer put through it, but I'm hoping to make that happen next week. Those are a couple ways. It's an ongoing discussion, and everyone in the industry is feeling the pain right now, for sure.
Yeah, so that's an interesting. Pulling back, it feels like a decent strategy, but the 4-barrel system, are you planning to try new things that way? Is that it's going to make you more nimble? Does that mean you get to put more experiments out on tap?
It's going to give us a lot of flexibility that we currently don't have. Yeah, I'm looking forward to putting anything and everything through that system in a way that we can't on the system that you see behind me. And also, we talked about it with Ken about, recipe changes, and, we don't have the opportunity to really go whole hog on trying to reformulate, night swimmers, say, and do a drastic recipe change, because we just can't do that. So this will give us a chance to potentially make large changes and maybe just put a different name on it and put it on tap at the pub, and no one's hurt in the process, no one's offended. So
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
Yeah.
Did you previously have a test system, or how were you playing with your recipes before?
Well, we did. We had a 1-barrel more beer system and 4 1-barrel fermenters. We still have the fermenters. The 1-barrel system kind of hit the end of its life. We put a lot of batches through that system. Yeah, we did a lot of beers in the winter on that system. You got 1 keg out of it, and so in the end, it took just as much time to get 1 keg as the 20-barrel batch behind us, but it gave us a lot of room to play. I think that the problem with that system is just that the output on it was just a little too small for the work you put into it for what we needed, and it just, I don't know, there's something about that 1-barrel batch and those fermenters, like the beer never really seemed quite as good as it should have been. There's something about it that we never could quite put our finger on. That
You're getting into the homebrew part of things where you don't have the scale to, I wouldn't say hide things, but yeah, it's trickier.
Yeah, it's funny because I've certainly drank a lot of very good homebrew. Obviously, I've drank a lot of not very good homebrew, but the level of control you have at that scale can be quite amazing. And for some reason, it never translated to that 1-barrel system. I don't know if that was a fault of us or a fault of the system or what, but I'm looking forward to scaling up our playground a little bit from 1-barrel to 4-barrel. We bought 5-barrel fermenters because 4-barrel fermenters aren't really a thing. It's a 500 hectoliter system. It's not a 4-barrel system. So looking forward to scaling that up and seeing what we get out of that system.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
You talked about your house strain of yeast from your sour program, and I was reading about your beers before the show, and I saw that you use Belgian yeast in some of them. So I'm just interested, do you have a yeast program? Are you cultivating it? Are you purchasing it? How are you managing that?
Yeah, so on our distribution beers, including our traditional Belgian style ales, the Beast, our Belgian double, and our Belgian style triple, our dark strong, golden strong, Rainmaker, Wild Away, they all use the same yeast strain. It's no secret. It's the Westmalle strain. If you go, I don't know White Lab's numbers, but it's a Y Yeast 3787 or Omega Belgian W. That's our house strain. We do purchase from, when we started, we purchased from Y Yeast. We've since switched to Omega. And we start with a 5-barrel pitch. If you want to get into the weeds of this, we brew a Rainmaker. We have a 5-barrel fermenter. We split a 20-barrel batch into a 15-barrel batch into a 20-barrel fermenter. That gets pitched with a harvested strain. 5 barrels goes into a 5-barrel fermenter with the new pitch, and we harvest that. That becomes the new generation. So then we'll pitch that into a 20-barrel batch, the next 20-barrel batch that we do. We use Rainmaker and Birdwalker as our harvested brews. We don't harvest off of our IPA. We don't harvest off anything else other than Rainmaker and Birdwalker. We typically, and I order a new strain every month, or a new pitch every month. So we're getting depending on the time of year, we're getting anywhere from 4 to 8 brews off of a 5-barrel purchased pitch. And this strain, granted, we're in a different place now, but when we first started, it just seemed like it petered out around the 8th generation. So now I just order a new pitch once a month. So we're typically using 3 to 5 generations, and then we start fresh again. It'd be interesting now that we know a lot more than we did 8 years ago to see if we could take that out further. But nothing's worse than brewing a 20-barrel batch and then doing a yeast count and seeing that it's not going to do its job.
Yeah, well, and then you need a bunch of different lab equipment to test your yeast and cultivate your yeast and all that too.
Yeah, we don't cultivate per se. We don't keep a strain here and inoculate and grow it up from a single cell, but we do a yeast count on every batch, and it's always solid. It's always good.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're going for consistency.
Yeah.
You had mentioned your reverse osmosis before. I love the idea of those things, and just curious, do you go for water profiles of other cities so you can do like an authentic style Kolsch or something like that?
Yeah, the water's been a long journey. We, oddly enough, being this close to the lake, you'd think we'd have great water. We have terrible water here in Frankfurt. They don't draw it straight from the lake. They draw it from a well, and the well, I don't know what. Frankfurt is located over some kind of sulfur pit. It's, there's a well, an artesian well, and right in the park in the city center there, and it smells like a lit match. It's the sulfur levels in our water are crazy, off the charts. So, early on in year one, we got tired of our, trying to brew a blonde and having it smell like an egg. So we installed the RO system. The RO system that we have here at the production facility is, 2.0 compared to that one. It's pretty sophisticated. So I'm not a water chemist. I'm not an organic chemist. I have a fine art degree that prepared me poorly for organic chemistry. So water's been a long journey. I started by sort of mimicking different cities' waters, and where we're at today is we just have a base water profile that's our own, and it gets modified up or down depending on what style we're brewing. Other than that, I don't play around with big huge adjustments trying to make it look or mimic one water or another.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the other thing, as you learn is like there's no guarantee that when you're looking at if you look at Frankfurt's water profile, and you want to mimic Rainmaker, so you look at Frankfurt's water profile, you're way off base. So
I shouldn't be throwing eggs in there or something?
Yeah. There's no guarantee, even in a city that has good water, that the water they're using matches what's coming in from the city.
So, and speaking of the city, of your city community, I was checking out your pub space. I was asking around about it because I haven't ever been up to that neck of the woods. Can you kind of describe the pub and how it works in the community and like how people hang out there, like what sort of events you have and things that go on?
Yeah, sure. I wish Rick was on the call. That's really his passion and his department. The pub. So I'm sitting in the production facility. The pub is just 10 blocks away. It's on a lot. It's an old. That building's been there since the beginning. It used to be the Seven spot. It was a saloon for many, many years. It had 2 empty lots next to it. We turned one of the empty lots into the brewery and a patio, and then the third lot is just open space. That's where we put the curling sheet and picnic tables out in the summer. Other than that, I mean, it's a nice cozy space. We purposefully hired a female interior designer to make a space that isn't a man cave. I guess that's the best way to put it.
She did a good job.
Yeah. It seems like it paid off. We wanted, my wife and Rick's wife aren't the first people to gravitate towards beer, but we wanted them to have a place that they were happy and comfortable to go to. We have a food menu. It's basically pizza and sandwiches, but we try to make sure they're top quality. So, yeah. What else you want to know? I probably missed something. Rick could have answered that far better than I could.
No, that's good. It gives me an idea. And so the people who are coming by is it locals? Do you guys get a lot of tourists up there?
Well, I mean, in the summer, it's crazy. It's out of control. And that's one of the things we tried to accomplish here with the production facility. We have a small tap room, but with an outdoor space that's pretty big. You will see the locals tend to gravitate down here in the summer. But it's pretty crazy because, tourists, while we do have some busy days here at the tap room, just even being, 10 blocks from downtown makes a huge difference in the numbers of visitors here at the tap room. So it's a lot quieter. It's a lot more chill here, even though you can practically see the other space from here. You can walk straight in and sit down anywhere you want here and have a beer, but down there you're waiting an hour for a table. It's crazy.
The other thing that I noticed while I was checking you out earlier is that there seems to be a lot that you guys are doing with cycling, and I am a transportation cyclist, but I'm always interested in these sorts of things. So it looked like you had like clubs and meetups. Is that right?
Wednesdays, the cycling club starts up on Wednesdays. Really early in the season, it meets at the pub, and then as it warms up and as the tap room opens up, it transitions to down here, and then it does the reverse in the fall. I think they're wrapped up by now. The same group of people, a much smaller version of the group, does a winter cycling fat tire bike out of Ironfish, which is not too far from here. That always seems like a good time too. Yeah, it does draw in the height of winter, in the heart of winter. It draws a pretty good crowd of cyclists. Yeah, and it splits up into A group and B group essentially.
Sure. And then I have one more question before I hand it over to Ken. I am curious. So the cycling thing, the Belgian yeast question, it has me. My 2 local breweries that I really enjoy. One is Upland. They do sours. They also have a cycling team. They sponsor a cycling team. Another one is Taxman. They do Belgian beers very well.
I've been to both.
Okay, excellent. And the reason I bring them up is I want to ask about collaborations, whether you do them, whether you want to do them.
I would love to do a collaboration with either of them, especially Taxman. They make great beer. I have hung out with them, and they've been here. Hung out with them. So, when was CBC was in Denver a couple years back, and myself and Brews Beers, they're out of Denver. They're a Belgian focused brewery. We organized a little Belgian focused brewery meetup. and that was pretty cool. That not many of us showed up, but the guys from Taxman were one of them. And I've been to 2 of their locations, and I'd like to get back. I would love to do a collab with those guys. And I've been at Upland too. Also a very sweet place. Love to do a collab with them too. We don't do that many. We're a little off the beaten path for sure. We have done a few. I've always thought it'd be really super cool if we could, buy a place that we could run as an Airbnb and just cycle brewers through and do collabs in the summer, but it just hasn't happened.
I suspect you could lure Upland in with the cycling.
Yeah.
Well, coming back to me, I have a delicious Rainmaker to start drinking. This style of beer is easily one of my favorite styles of beer. Being an amber ale, is this one of your top sellers? Do you still, being off the beaten path, get the IPA hop heads out there? What's the kind of go-to beer for the folks of Frankfurt?
It's interesting. My wife does some part-time work here in the brewery just to help me out. She compiles a graph every week on the whole tap list and what sold the most. In the summertime, Rainmaker's number one year round, mostly. In the summertime, it bounces around between Rainmaker and Birdwalker, our blonde. Very interesting. While the way our IPA is usually, up there, but never at the top, but it is our number one growler seller. And Birdwalker, our blonde, which is basically our number 2 or number 1 on any given week, is our lowest growler seller. I've always found that statistic pretty interesting, So the people that like beer and are taking it home are taking home the IPA. The people that are here, in the summertime, it's tourists. What's your lightest beer? Very few of them are taking a growler or Birdwalker home. Yeah.
With the changes of craft beer, the landscape, obviously going through COVID, on-prem, off-prem, distro, has that changed the way people have looked at the kind of beer that you're providing, or are people coming back to your main styles? Because we're seeing a lot of higher want of low ABV, low alcohol, calorie conscious drinkers coming into the fold. Has that changed, or is everything kind of getting back to 2019 data for you with those graphs?
Well, no, I mean, honestly, the graphs haven't changed. At least at the pub, they haven't changed. And frankly, we've always been, Rainmaker's always been our flagship since day one. We haven't really chased other trends. It took us a very long time to put out what was something similar to a hazy. We've never made a seltzer. So Rainmaker's always been our number one beer, and it still is. So we've never really given anything else a chance to be number one, though. So I don't know if that's a fair answer to your question, or it's.
Well, obviously balancing business with what you want to do. What is a reason why you haven't made a seltzer or maybe some other FMB that fits within your profile?
Good question. We probably should have.
You talk about tourism, and that's kind of like a huge. I don't want to say missed opportunity. I'm not here to judge your business. You're in business, and I'm not. So, I
don't know. I guess I'm just as an owner and the head brewer. I've never had a passion for seltzers, so I just haven't made them. And yeah, we could have a seltzer on tap, and maybe we could sell a lot of it. Rick says, well, when you don't have this beer, they buy a different beer. If you don't have this, they buy a different beer. Like, there's a lot of people coming through. I've always had the mentality that, well, then rather than putting something on that I'm not passionate about, let's just hope they try a Rainmaker and love it. They're going to drink something. And if they have a Rainmaker and leave and they look for it later, great. But if they have a seltzer, they're not going to look for a Rainmaker later. We're in a strange economy here where we get customers no matter kind of what we do or don't do. That doesn't change the effort that we put into the quality by any means, but it does change my mindset a little bit about what we put on tap.
Well, I'm looking at your Untapped page, and I see One String Puppet, which is your New England IPA, your hazy IPA, I should say. Is that one of those I don't want to say clout chasers that you guys created, or is that just like something that, because you mentioned not doing the seltzers, but
right.
I see like a New England IPA, and that's kind of the beer world of what the calorie conscious people want.
Right. Yeah. Well, it took us a long time to do an IPA, a New England IPA, and I didn't do that one. Chris did, who's no longer with us anymore. Chris had a lot of creative freedom to do what he wanted. So, and the next Chris that comes in will as well. If Chris wanted to do a seltzer, he could have done a seltzer. He had free creative reign. I think Chris was on the same page as me. Like we didn't do something just for the sake of doing it. Chris was an early explorer, of Phantasm. We were one of the first ones in the state to get it. Not that you'll know that because we're kind of tucked away here in the middle of nowhere and not necessarily on the radar of a lot of people. But, Chris was one of the first people to bring Phantasm into the state. That's one string was a Phantasm beer. And I assume you're familiar with Phantasm. Yeah. Yeah. So that's how that came to be. We didn't do just a straight New England. It was just like, well, here's this new ingredient. Let's give this a go, and it was cool.
For those curious, aka myself, how do you manage the off season? Like, do you temp down the brewery production to kind of meet what's over there, or do you focus a little bit more on distribution? Like, how do you manage this? Because it's either you're on and at 1,000%, or I'm sure you're probably at 10%. Like there's no happy medium in this world.
I always say there's two seasons in Frankfurt: summer and not summer. That's it. And summer is 12 weeks. It's not 3 months. It's 12 weeks. How do we deal with? Well, adding the 4-barrel system is a direct result of trying to deal with winter for sure. Other than that, man, I don't know if we could figure out how to not bleed money in the winter. God, someone solve that, please.
I think a lot of people don't appreciate cities like yours, St. Ignace, Escanaba, where they're not college towns. Yeah. It's tourism heavy, and when the tourism's done, like the only people that are left are the people that live in the city.
Yeah.
So I was always curious how you manage that kind of super high, and then super low. But it sounds like you're just kind of you get ready for the summer, you get your 12 weeks in, and then for the next 40 weeks, you're kind of planning the 12 weeks of summer for the next year. Is that what I'm getting?
I mean, more or less. It's horrible. Would I do it again? I don't know, but would I not do it again? I would definitely do it again. I
guess for the listeners out there, how do they support you during the winter times where they might not want to?
Well, they should come up here in the winter. First off, September is the perfect month to come to Northern Michigan. The crowds are gone. The weather's amazing. And the weekends are still a little busy, but nothing like summer. It is the perfect month in Northern Michigan. After that, if we get some snow, it's great. We have less snow now than we used to, but Stormcloud's an open, welcome, warm environment. Our staff is second to none. They're amazing, and you've been there. You've walked into a place when it's super busy and it's hard to get someone's attention, and you have to wait for a table, and it's burn and turn. And you go into a place when it's a little slower and the staff is friendly, and you strike up a conversation, and you're sitting at the bar and someone's sitting next to you and it's relaxed, and you strike up a conversation, make a friend. I mean, that's what it's like in the winter. Everyone should come here in the winter. It's perfect in terms of a relaxed environment and having conversations with staff and sitting next to a local and asking them, how the hell do you survive winter? It's great. I love winter up here. It's a relaxed time, and everything's still here. We still have 16 taps flowing.
Do you have mountains up there over in Frankfurt, like any skiing or cross country? Crystal?
Yep. Lots. There's plenty of cross country if there's snow. That's the only issue.
I guess that's a true statement. You can't really cross country and not snow. And I think we're going through a La Nina this winter, which is supposed to be a very warm winter. So,
yeah.
But I mean, that means, you're not going to be having to drive through a snowstorm to get up to Frankfurt to enjoy. Probably going to get discounted hotel rates. Probably going to get.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Even
discounts probably start around November. Yeah.
I always love going up to northern Michigan, especially as the colors change and you get that, I always call it like fat guy weather, where you can wear a hoodie and shorts.
That's right.
And be comfortable. That's like the perfect weather, I think, for everyone, but everyone knows it's called fat guy weather because if you see a guy still in shorts, maybe sandals and a hoodie, you're good to go.
Yeah, so it's too hot. It's hot.
There are people that I know that wear sweaters 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. It's 110 outside, and I'm like, why are you in a sweater? And they're like, it's comfy.
I used to be that girl.
I have plenty of questions about why you would want to be in a sweater at that time. As we roll through the end of this episode, we like to end each and every episode with a fun, entertaining, lighthearted question. So I'm going to start with Wendy. Wendy, what is your final question for Brian here?
What is your favorite beer that Stormcloud has released?
Oh,
that Stormcloud has released. Well, there's many answers to that question.
I mean, that double sounds really good. I love a Belgian ale. I'm blessed to at least know Dragon Mead's right around the corner. Not right around the corner. It's like an hour away now.
Yeah, that's solid, dependable beer too. I drink the most. Rainmaker I drink the most of. I'm really happy and proud of our double. I don't drink it nearly as often as I do Rainmaker. Mostly because it's not in a can and I don't get to the pub as often. So I've often got cans of Rainmaker at home. I'm really, really proud and in the summertime, I find myself crushing Sunrunner. That's our summer ale in a way that I never really expected that I would. And then lastly, I would say our triple. By the way, Rainmaker took silver. I don't know if anybody knows this because everybody pays attention to GABF, but not the Brussels Beer Challenge. But Rainmaker took silver at Brussels Beer Challenge. We lost to Duvel Mortgard, who makes, Duvel.
Yeah.
They took gold. It wasn't with Duvel, but it was with the beer that they make. So I guess we're going to have to try a little harder to beat Duvel at their own game. But our triple 228 triple took a silver at GABF, and that's another beer that I'm proud of. But I don't know if I answered your question. At the moment, I'm gonna say Rainmaker, just because I just drink a lot of Rainmaker.
There's no wrong answer. That's the beauty of that question.
Yeah.
And that triple is amazing, by the way.
Thanks.
Rob,
what is your next upcoming beer trip or your favorite beer trip that you've done?
There's been a lot of them. It's easy to say, being a Belgian-inspired brewery, I've only been to Belgium one time, so I'm very much looking forward to the next time. I don't know when that's going to happen. My oldest son, went to school and now resides in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's always fun to get down there and visit breweries in North Carolina. Asheville, although they took a hit, I don't know when they're going to be back online fully, but I've done a couple trips to Asheville. Me and my buddy Josh from Oddside did a road trip to Asheville to see a metal band Gojira and spend a couple of days visiting breweries. That might be the one. I gotta say, that was a pretty good trip.
They just played the French Olympics.
I know. They took a gold medal in metal. Gold medal in metal. That might be my favorite trip. Josh is a great guy. We drank a lot of great beer, and that was a good time.
all right, my final question for you. You and your cohort over at Stormcloud, the founders, what is the one beer game that no matter what, you will always beat him in?
What constitutes a beer game?
We can go with
beer pong. I know that.
Yeah, like beer pong, or
I think curling would count.
I would say your
Right.
your pub games, so your darts and billiards, or your beer games like flip cup, beer pong, that kind of stuff.
I feel like Rick's got me on all of those.
Oh no!
I'm
Do
not.
we got to go deeper into
I'm
the
not a
well?
sports guy, and I'm not a competitive guy. I could whoop them at beer trivia, like beer geek trivia.
You got the beer knowledge. What about as Travis mentions in the chat, beer related sports? So like golf, bowling. You don't have to be necessarily athletic for these.
I did mention I have a fine art degree, right?
You said you were good at photography, so I assumed
Yeah.
accuracy might be good to where you might be able to at least get something down.
Maybe Pictionary.
I suck at maybe Pictionary. Maybe I suck at sports.
What about
Rick's
categories? You think
Oh,
you could come up with a bunch of words that he couldn't come up with in categories?
I'm gonna take gold in categories.
Yes. Stormcloud Brewing, where can they find you online, beer distribution, everything like that?
Stormcloudbrewing.com. Simple. And that'll link you to Instagram and whatever else we're on.
Are you on the TikToks? Do you got TikToks going on?
I don't think we have TikToks. I'm not really sure. I'm old and I don't fuck around with social media. We got people to do that.
Well, that is going to do it. Episode 50 of the Michigan Beer Series. My name is Ken. For Rob and Wendy, we appreciate you coming on out. Brian, Stormcloud Brewing, Frankfort, Michigan. Go check them out. They are open all year round, not just during the summer.
Come see us later.
Yeah, but no matter what you think of your beer, we think it's better on draft. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Cheers.